Did I just going? Okay. Are
Have
we
you guys
ready?
done a podcast before? Once.
Once
Okay.
before. Pros. Yes.
Love it.
Basically celebrities. It's
Yeah.
fine.
That's perfect. Okay, timer is started and we're ready. All right, guys, welcome back for another episode of Just Another Biz podcast. Today, Kari and I are chatting with the owners of Mint Spring. Rewind. Today, Kari and I are chatting with the owners of Mint Springs Farm, a wedding venue just outside of Nashville that Beck and Kelly recently acquired. We know a lot of wedding pros think about venue ownership as the next logical step in their wedding career, so we thought we would ask these gals all about their experience. Before we dive in, let me tell you a little bit about our guest today. Beck was literally born into events, like literally. Her dad was working an event with her mom when her mom went into labor. So, Beck, I feel like we're going to need to hear more about that story. A Nashville native, she spent 12 years at G Catering, managing over 3,000 events and a staff of 150. From weddings to music award shows, Beck has done it all. She loves designing events, staying organized, and unwinding at Orange Theory. Fun fact, she was in Hannah Montana movie. Also need to hear about that. Her drink of choice, a bourbon neat or French 75. Kelly got her start in events at 18, working high profile Cape Cod weddings, including for the Kennedy family. Gonna need to hear that story. With a hospitality event management degree, she sets her sights on major cities and moved to Nashville in 2015. Since then, she's worked over 350 weddings, plus A-list events like the CMA Artist of the Year Awards. Now a business owner and new mom, Kelly loves hot yoga, New England sports, and a good glass of wine. Beck and Kelly, welcome to the podcast.
Hi.
Thank you so much for having
Yeah.
us.
We're so excited to be here.
Yeah, I feel like Gabby said, there's so many stories I want to hear about. So let's dive in. I know Gabby mentioned like owning a wedding venue is kind of the next step for a lot of wedding pros. I feel like a lot of people I talk to even are like, oh, it's a dream to have a wedding venue. So what inspired you guys to purchase Mint Springs Farms, and how did you envision it standing out in the competitive wedding venue market that we're in?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll
Yeah.
speak for myself first. I've been in the wedding industry, the event industry for many, many years. I think I'm going on 17 years now. So when I first started, I actually worked with a wedding planner, and we worked numerous venues all over the Boston area, Cape Cod area. And I always remember there was one specific venue that every time we were on site, they were always just the friendliest, kindest, and funnest group of people. And I'm like, well, this is really nice. Like, it's a good change of pace. And being new to the industry, you don't know a whole lot about the stress that comes with it just right off the bat. But I just knew, like, I just felt good every time I stepped onto that property. And I knew, like, this is kind of a good goal to have. So many, many years moving forward, when I was working at G Catering, couple years ago, I was started thinking, my wheels were turning. I'm like, well, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? And it was actually 2019 where I started thinking, I want to start putting a plan in motion of how am I going to own a venue? Like, I want to cultivate that environment of treating the vendors with such love and respect that I had felt many years ago. And of course, bringing that to our clients as well. So 2019, I started writing some ideas of how I was going to put those steps into place, and then the world shut down. And I was like, thank goodness I don't know a wedding venue. But that we came out of that, and then Beck and I kind of came together, and we both said, well, what's next? And we put together a business plan, and here we are 3 years later. So
Yeah.
Is that how you guys met at the catering company?
Yes. Yes. So, I was in the trenches, and doing lots of events, and Kelly
poor thing.
very bravely decided to move to Nashville without a job. She just was like, I want to move to Nashville. And I don't know how many jobs you applied for, but you applied for G Catering, and the resume came to my email, and I read it, and I was like, we have to hire her. we have to hire her. And so Guy, the owner of G Catering, called Kelly, set up an interview. She came in, and the rest is history. Her first event she ever did was CMT Artist of the Year. And myself being honestly, I got very numb to working music industry events because I just did it all the time. And so I didn't think it was a big deal. But later on, find out that she's like, that was huge. Like, I can't believe that the very first event I worked was CMT Artist of the Year. I was like, yeah, it's fine. Like, I don't know. I mean, there's going to be lots of stars there, but whatever. And it kind of became a joke of there were certain clientele and planners that I worked with that did a lot of artists events. And so they'd be like, oh yeah, we're doing something for Dan and Shay. And it was when they first started. And Kelly was like, what do you get to do? I'm like, I don't know who they are. And then I just did their event. So anyways, we worked
7 years.
7 years together
Yep.
at G Catering. And interestingly enough, because we were really on the same, we were in the same position, we actually didn't work a ton of events together. And so, but we knew like our work ethic, what we stood for, how we worked together, and we knew that we would really complement each other. Kelly is very sweet, and she is such a go-getter and is great with clientele. And I have a different, detail style than she might have, but she's still very detail oriented. So we just complement each other really well. And this opportunity came about, and we're like, we would be foolish not to pursue it. So
Yeah, I think it too. Beck also has such an incredible eye for design that I feel like I lack. So really, like when we first came together and started putting this plan in motion, we were like, this actually works really well together. So we're very grateful for it all.
So like, what does that, because I'm trying to picture like the moment that you're both like, okay, let's sit down and we're going to buy this wedding venue. Like, do you even know what you do next? Do you Google how to buy a wedding venue?
yeah,
Once or twice.
yeah.
No, I think it was the opportunity came, and we so Mint Springs was an already established wedding venue, and we knew the former owner very well, and we kind of knew that she was ready to retire. And that we were both at the points of our careers where we're like, okay, what are we going to do next? Just like what's next for us. And so just kind of coming together, and once we both were on the same page of like, okay, we're gonna do this. We had an incredible team in our corner that we
did not do it alone.
We did not do it alone. It for sure takes a village, and we really leaned in on them to guide us of getting the appropriate loans and licensure and all of
Contracts.
We had countless numbers of meetings. But we have a great team. So.
It was a year and a half process from start to finish of like really deciding that we were going to move forward and then getting everything in motion. And all while that year and a half we were working at G Catering. And for a long time, people at G Catering didn't know. So
yeah, we had to keep it very quiet for a while for legal reasons. But as you two know, in the wedding industry, like you have to plan ahead. So it was a year and a half long process, but we both were planning for, okay, what are the prices going to be for this year? How are we going to do this? Doing tours, and everything is just so far in the future. So it wasn't just a quick overnight purchase. It was a lengthy year and a half process to get it all completed.
And we know that like our story is probably very different than, different journeys that people may have of buying a venue, starting a venue, building a venue, because there's a lot of times where, people buy a piece of land and then they build and then they prepare the business plan, hire the team, things like that. And so we were, essentially buying a business, and then obviously the buildings and the structures around it, but it was already a well-established business. And then we were just, expanding it and making it our own. So,
but I think that's interesting.
I feel like that's
yeah, go ahead, Kari. I feel
ahead.
like we're going to say the same thing.
I was just saying, I feel like it's so interesting to hear that because I also think so many people in the wedding industry kind of glamorize what we do, right? Of like owning a wedding venue, being a wedding planner. And it's like there's so many logistical, legal, like things behind the scenes that you have to do. And so I think even the thought of owning a wedding venue seems like, oh, that'd be so fun to give tours and like all of these things. But there's so many legal things behind that and just owning a large property that I think a lot of people kind of forget about the nitty-gritty details of what we do.
Yeah, and especially owning an already established venue. It's not just like just our ideas and this is what we want to implement for our venue. It's okay, well, we can't completely rebrand everything right off the bat, but and it was really important to us to hold on to the culture here and really keep the history and really how Ben Springs has always been run in with the clients, but just get a new take on it, give our own vision kind of towards it. So it's been a lot of fun, but it has been kind of a different journey for us to buy an already established business where we didn't necessarily have to reinvent the wheel versus someone just wanting to build a venue and starting everything from ground zero. So
Yeah.
sure.
And I was going to say, because so Kari had asked about, what makes you stand out from other wedding venues? And you just brought up a good point about you did want to keep pieces of the existing venue, part of the history, culture, the way they're great to their clients, all that kind of stuff. And what are just maybe a few things that you did to make it your own? And knowing that you're coming from a different background, you've been in so many different pieces of the wedding industry. Like you've probably seen things that the previous owner had not experienced or seen. And so how to what's your competitive edge, I would say, at this point.
I have an answer, but I know you have an answer too.
Go ahead.
I think that because we were in the industry, I think that there are seriously so many beautiful venues in Nashville. But to be honest, probably most of them are owned by people that are investors, and they have never run an event in their life. And so we are so client focused, but something that was really important to Kelly and I was also being vendor focused because we've been on that side of it. We've gone into venues where they're like, you can't roll over, this floor, or you have these XYZ rules. And like, we get it. You have to have rules, but we want to be realistic because we want our vendors to succeed. And so we really wanted to cultivate a culture that really made those vendors shine, because when they shine, our clients are happy, and then it's just a cyclical situation. And so I think that's our edge. Is I would put good money on the fact that most venue owners in the Nashville area, I can't speak to the whole country, but to the Nashville area, are primarily owned by investors who aren't in the day to day. And so we understand what it takes to execute an event, what it takes to speak to the client, and just make, weddings and events happen. So
yeah. And it was really important to us to be very, very hands-on. I mean, Beck is like the lead designer here. So she takes on this huge designing role. And I'm one of the primary planners. So we knew that it wasn't just going to be, okay, we're just going to sit back and let our team run everything. Like, no, we're going to be there every day, and we're going to put in a lot of hard work and a lot of hours, because we want to be the face of this business. We want to show our passion and how excited this business makes us. So we knew it's going to be a lot of work, but we're used to that. So we're very happy about where we are compared to other venues. So.
Yeah.
I love that.
That's a huge thing, I think, to keep the vendor experience in mind, right? Because that then bleeds into how the day is for the couple, right? And it's like thinking about myself with some venues that I work at, they're like, you get 2 hours to set everything up, and you're just like, oh my God, it's a lot when you're like, everyone's coming in at once and you are on a time crunch to make this beautiful day happen, And even so, I feel like having that aspect and like, experience on your end is so beneficial to the vendors.
Yeah.
Okay, shifting a little bit to some challenges because it can't be sunshine and rainbows all the time, right? Like this podcast, we get nitty-gritty with just the reality of how things are in the wedding industry. And I would love to know so far, kind of what are some of the biggest challenges that you faced in running a wedding venue, especially because you guys are both so involved with it and you're not just investors that are, wipe your hands clean all the time. And specifically, maybe like a few behind the scenes things that have happened that maybe most people don't think of, specifically when we're talking about venue ownership or buying a venue or running a venue.
Mm-hmm. So, I'll start on
Yeah.
this one. So I think our first year, the biggest challenge for us was we've been in the catering industry for years. So we've just been known as we're the help, we're the kind of key to hospitality and how events are run. So it's always been in our nature to just be people pleasers. And when we first owned the business, we had to create that fine line of okay, we want to make sure that we're hospitality focused and our clients are happy and clients are always right and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But finding that line of, okay, how do we, if there were issues with clients or a client was unsatisfied with something, instead of just saying, okay, we'll just give your money back, how do we mitigate the situation to um, not us losing money or having the risk of a negative review, but still feeling like the situation was handled. The biggest thing that I think we've learned is we want to make sure that our clients that may be unsatisfied or unhappy in any areas that they feel seen and they feel heard and their feelings are validated. Because sometimes it's all that the clients are looking for. They're not necessarily asking for all of their money back or any money back for that matter, but more of they just want to feel validated that they may not be right in the situation,
Yeah.
but will never admit that. But that their feelings are valid and they might have been hurt in a certain way. And we want to make them feel like we are on their team and we support them. And most of the time, hoping that that is kind of mitigates any sort of issue.
Yeah.
I'm
Because
so, oh, really
yeah.
quick. I want to just mention I'm so glad you said this about the clients needing to be heard because I had this exact situation just happen. Like I'm in it. I'm just ending it now, but essentially we have a couple who booked this kind of boutique hotel in Colorado and they are a Friday wedding and there is a Saturday wedding the next day. And while there is no proof of this, they have been feeling like they were second best to the Saturday wedding. So rooms were getting booked out, and a green room that was supposed to be for the band got booked up before they were able to grab it. And so this whole time, they are assuming that the hotel is putting them second. And there's been a lot of emotions around this on the couple side. And I've had to kind of be this messenger in between them and the venue.
Yeah.
And I had a great call with the venue. I said, listen, they're not looking to your point. They're not looking for money back. They want to be heard. They are feeling, there's just feelings about this. Like for them, it is their one big day. And for us, unfortunately, it is one of 20, 30, 40, 50 weddings. And the venue person even told me, she's like, I'll be honest, I have trouble keeping everybody's name straight. We have Friday, Saturday, Sunday weddings until the end of time. And I'm like, yeah, that is the nature of running a wedding venue in that sense. But in this case, what can we do to just make them feel like they're being heard and understood? And essentially the solution was that they were given a room for one night to accommodate the band. It was all about the band needing accommodation. It was something that was a huge priority for the couple. And so stuff was done, but the message just truly was, I want to be heard and I don't want to be I don't want to feel like just a number on your calendar?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people forget weddings are emotional.
They're so emotional. Yeah.
So, and I think us as planners and stuff, we understand that, but sometimes when you've got back-to-back weddings and you've got all these things going, sometimes we do kind of lose the touch of like, right, this is their only daughter's wedding or the first daughter's wedding. This is everything to them. And a lot of people, I think, kind of forget that at times when there's stuff going on and stress and we're in the thick of wedding season. So just trying to remind ourselves and for everybody that feelings are valid no matter what they are, and just making them feel heard.
Yeah. It's like the saying, people won't necessarily remember what you do or say, but they'll remember how you made them feel. And I feel like, as Kelly is saying, as you all are saying, like, it's so emotional and you have to keep that in mind. And it's hard. Like, it's hard to be that for everyone. It's not easy. But that's what we strive to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, you really got to remind yourself, because even as planners, right, it's like one of maybe 15 weddings that we're doing in the year. And it's like, it's just second nature to us to like go through a wedding day. But yeah, being heard, it's like so needed, so necessary for that client experience. So kind of going back to, I know you mentioned the vendor like relationships and how you guys really want to make sure that your vendors are being taken care of on the wedding day too, and that like things are easy for them. So can you tell us a little bit more about that collaboration between you and like external vendors that are coming on site and planners as well, and how you work together?
Yeah. So for our so when we first came on board, there being an all-inclusive venue, we have specific vendors that were already established here. So it was really important for us to personally meet with those inclusive vendors to talk through like, how has it been for you? What can we fix moving forward to make this an even better experience that you've had here? And we're all learning, they're learning our management style. We're learning how they're all working. So it was definitely a learning curve. And I think now we're in a great system and have been well since before last year. But just hearing them and also going back to making people feel heard, making sure that our vendors are feeling heard and that their feelings are validated too. And we want to take care of our people. So our inclusive vendors, it was really important for us to hold on to those because they knew the ins and outs of weddings and events here and the property itself. And in regards to, we do have a preferred vendor list that we do give our couples. We did make edits and changes to that, but we also had reached out to quite a few of those too, to kind of talk through, okay, what has worked well here for you? Do you even still want to be on a preferred vendor list? And it's really important for Beck and I to know exactly who's on our list. So if we have a new photographer or a new videographer come on site and we've never worked with them before, because clients are allowed to bring in any of their own non-included vendors, so hair and makeup, guest transportation, and things of that nature. So if they bring in a photographer that we'd never worked with before, we have lots of communication back and forth with them to kind of explain the property and how things run. And once they're out here, and if we see visually how they work, we see their end product, how they treat clients, and it fits our vision, then we'd love to have the conversation for them to join the preferred vendor list. But one of the biggest things we want to do here for our couples is we want to take away a lot of that stress and the work for them. So by having this preferred vendor list, we've vetted all of the vendors. We know their work ethic. We know the product they're going to deliver, and know it fits in with our vision here of the products we want to give and the services we want to give to our clients. So that has been a really key important factor for us into making sure that it's not a million pages long, but it's kind of toned into what we feel the vision of Mint Springs is.
And what's hard is there's so many amazing vendors. There's so many amazing business owners and things like that. And we want to help them all. But we really want to be client and vendor focused. And in that, we have to make the decision of not having, as Kelly said, a list that is 50 pages long, because that doesn't help the client. Like, that's so overwhelming. And then the vendors aren't getting any business. They're getting like one wedding a year. And they're like, why should I be on your list? And I think that's a hard pill to swallow for some people, because you're like, oh, I would love to have you on our list, but we can't have 50 people, 50 coffee carts, that would just be overwhelming. But but yeah, just learning how they, come on site. Like we had a photographer this year that came on site like 3 or 4 times and we loved her. And so we added her to the list. And now she's, going to be doing some weddings here this year. And so we're super excited about that. And so that ended up being a good fit. And sometimes vendors come on site and they're not a good fit, and that's okay. So yeah.
Well, and I was going to say, I think we're going to hear two camps of comments about this topic, this is so fun that we're talking about it. I think on a vendor side, some people might say, inclusive vendor or exclusive vendors, that's so frustrating because it doesn't allow us the chance to get in. That's one view. Of course, understandable, valid, totally get that. On the other hand, from a venue owner, I would 1000% be like, and we're talking exclusive vendors. You said you have, in-house catering and bar.
Catering, bar, DJ, florals. We have our in-house kind of semi-planning services.
Okay.
And on-site sprinter van that brings the bridal party back and forth from either side of the property.
Okay.
And yes.
And we can get into planner side of it in a minute, but
yeah, because I know we've talked about this. But I think on a venue side, you're like, these are things that we can't risk outsourcing necessarily, or you have such a great relationship. Obviously, you guys both come from a catering background, so it only makes sense to have that be a solid experience for your clients. And I do think clients come, and there is such an overwhelming amount of wedding vendors that exist in the world that they're probably like, I don't even know where to start. And so if they can have the venue give them recommendations on where to start, that is where a lot of referrals, at least on our end, that where we are on preferred venue list, that's a huge win for us. And it's a huge relief for the venue, right? Because you're like, I know who's coming. I don't have to stress out. That is all very, very smooth. And so I'm going to be curious to see what people's thoughts are on that piece of it, but I can see both sides. Like if we're really talking here specifically about venue ownership, I think I would want to do something similar, like saying, if you are not on the preferred list, or you can't not be outside of the exclusive list. But if you're not on the preferred list, there has to be maybe a meet and greet ahead of time. You have to come and get familiar with the venue, or you have to have a Zoom call, or like some rules that need to be followed just for your sake and for their sake. So I love that. I will say, I think a big question, and if you guys know the answer to this, we'd love to hear your thoughts, but how do vendors, qualified vendors, what is their best way to connect with venue owners and get on the list? Because what I've found that has been my best way, and Kari, I'm curious what you've done, aside from actually working a wedding at that venue and connecting with the owners and doing a great job, obviously that's number one, but I have done venue walkthroughs with a photographer. So I bring a photographer, I ask to do a site tour. I want to know the ins and outs. I want to talk about it. And then I want to go home, get the photos from the photographer, and I want to blog about it. And I want to share with my audience, because I think that's a great way to give back to the venue and show them that we're serious about collaborating with them, and say, hey, I want to promote you to my audience. I want to say, maybe I'll put a little mood board on how I would design in that space or something like that. But it's not just a cold email saying, hey, Kelly and Beck, I want to be on your preferred list. What's next? Right?
Exactly.
No, I mean, honestly, that's brilliant. So good job.
Yes.
Good job.
It doesn't always get me on the list, but it gets me at least in contact with the people.
Yeah, it shows that you have a passion, you have a drive. You know, I think that's we unfortunately do get a lot of emails all the time of like, we want to be on your preferred vendor list, but we miss that connection. We miss that that personal touch to it all. So for what you're doing, keep doing more of that. That's exactly, I think, what we would look for if someone was really wanting to be on our list. And also, like, by you doing that, it shows an action. You know, it's not just verbal, like, yeah, I'm going to do all these things for you. It's you're showing up, you're doing the work and showing that you're really interested in our clients and our property and our dream of what we have here. So kind of matching that same passion to what we have too is huge for us. And you'll get a big response, at least from us, doing something like that.
And I think like networking too, you know, whether that's WIPA, you know, wedding planners groups, Heels and Handshakes, you know, if we're talking about the Nashville area, I think is a great opportunity to meet face to face, because when you get an email, you're like, okay, like no, I'm sorry. And then a tip to other vendors is don't pretend to be a couple. Don't pretend to be a couple. And
Wait, do they do that?
Oh my gosh, what?
Yeah. Because that's just like, that's starting out on the wrong foot. You're like, no. So that's just a piece of advice. Don't do that.
Do they try to show up and tour the venue like they're getting married?
No, that hasn't happened. But just like from an email conversation perspective, I don't really feel like it's productive, because it kind of, you know, starts it out under false pretenses. So, but I love the blog tour idea, because I just feel like it's a win-win for everyone. Like, obviously you have to write the blog, but that gets you content, which helps your SEO and, you know, and then also promotes the venue. So I hope that's been very successful for you.
Yeah, pretty good. Kari, what do you do, if anything, different?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of venues that I know, like in the LA area, that you have to work there a certain amount of times before you can be considered to get on the list. But I feel like, which that does make it hard, right? Because you're like, okay, how am I supposed to work there if I'm not on the list? Because like most couples, I feel like go with, especially a planner that's recommended. But I have gotten in just by like finding clients who like have booked me and then booked that venue. But for me, I think it is just the personal relationships, like getting to know the venue managers really well. And then I think just the way I work, they also love working with me because they're like, oh my gosh, my job is so much easier. We love working with your team because we know we don't have to worry about anything. So I feel like it's easy for me because I'm not a planner who's like stressing out the venue manager on a constant basis. So that's always really worked for me, just kind of building relationships with those people.
Yeah, and I think that's why it was really important to us, from the background that we have and working with wedding planners like yourselves and just wedding planners in this industry in Nashville. Yes, it was also very important to us to keep this as an all-inclusive venue, but we know the visions that planners like yourselves have, and we want to open the doors to that. Like we know the ceiling is endless when it comes to the design of what we could do in the farm here. So being very selective about who we allow as outside planners to come in was also very important to us. I think out of any of the preferred vendors for having outside planners come in, our list is very small, as you guys can see. So we know exactly what our clients like levels of their design and their vision would be. So that too was really important to kind of hold on to for having the outside planners come in too.
And kind of speaking to that, it's Kelly and I made a clear vision of like the level of design, hospitality, guest experience, like what our standards are. And with that, we have to vet all the outside planners that come in, and we're attracting a certain clientele. Like that's just the fact of the matter. We're not going to be you can't be all things to all people. And so having, you know, that small list, it's not like we're trying to be exclusive and like not let people join the club, but we have expectations and standards, because any business that you have to have your why, and you have to know what you're going after and your brand. And so we would love for, you know, all types of wedding planners to come in, but we want to have that personal relationship with them, and kind of know what their business is like as well. And I think in the wedding industry, it's sometimes easy to forget weddings are so emotional and personal, and that also makes vendors really personal as well. In other types of business, like I haven't been in, you know, banking and things like that, but I feel like it's probably a little less emotional and relational. And this is a hard industry, and so with couples, it's emotional, but it also is going to stem into those relationships with vendors and planners.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, I think the last thing about the preferred list, having the option to bring someone from the outside, to your point, Beck, is even if the quality of work from those on the list is like a 10 out of 10, but for some reason this client is just such a shy person and they cannot relate personality wise with anybody on that list, even if they love their work, it is so important to find a vendor that connects with them on a personal level also. And I'm noticing that this next generation of couples is 1000% choosing their vendors based on relationship. And it's not going to be enough to just show them their portfolio. We have to set up calls with them, make sure they're connecting, make sure there's a good relationship. And I don't blame them because they're spending the whole day together. And for the planners, they're spending maybe a year together. And if you guys are butting heads, it's not enough to it's not going to be inspiring for us, and it's not going to be exciting for the couples either. So yeah, I think having a list, great place for couples to start, but also allowing them to bring some more personal vendors in from the outside, of course, after being vetted, is the way to go.
So kind of moving into just like wedding days and your clientele that you have, do you guys see, I guess a two-part question on my end, any emerging trends from like couples that you see happening more frequently? And also, I guess from I'm sure every wedding you do, you learn something new. And so I'm curious, kind of maybe what are some things that stand out that you're like, never thought about that from running the venue side of things for every wedding that you do? Because I know when I do a wedding, there's always like a small thing that I'm like, okay, I'm gonna do that better next time.
Yeah. As far as trends go, I mean, we've seen a lot in the last year or so. Colors back, baby.
Yeah.
So, which we love. It was very whites and greens, which is still classic, timeless, endless, all of that stuff. But it's nice to see different colors and textures and dimensions, and not just in roses too, like different texture flowers and unique flowers. Um, Surprisingly, this year I've noticed a lot more couples wanting to put more money towards design. So maybe not doing elevated desserts or anything like that, but more so they want this beautiful floral installation. Something
Let's be real. They want it for the pictures.
It's
Yeah.
all about the gram. So
It's all about TikTok and Pinterest and Instagram. Like that's just where we are.
So
which we're
true.
here for. We're
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
whatever it is they want. But yeah, a big thing that we're seeing is just more about the photos and the design aspects and going bigger than any other bride has ever gone before in certain areas. And then they see the price and they're like, okay, we'll figure that out again.
Always.
But yeah, that's really like the biggest thing I'm seeing is just
Yeah.
color in everything.
Yeah.
For the most part.
And I also think like I don't know if this is really a trend, but this is what I want people to do is that I want people to get away from trends and what they're seeing and make it about the couple themselves. Um, some of the couples that I have, I've really been pushing like it doesn't matter what you see on TikTok, on Pinterest, on Instagram. Like if that's not you, don't do it. And incorporate other things that make it special to you. I think people are trying to make it more intimate, personal than maybe they have before, and really fun and interactive. And of course, you're going to see some repetitive things because people see something and they're like, oh, I want to do that too. But I personally really just want to encourage the clients, like, do what makes it, like, do what's going to make you all happy. And for the guests to say, that's so XYZ, the couple's name.
I love that point because I was gonna say that's always been something that I've done in my business where I feel like the older generation, especially, couples' parents would come in and they're like asking me, they're like, well, what's the right way to do it? Like, what's traditional? And like, well, yeah, like this is how maybe you do X, Y, and Z, but you don't have to, however you guys want to do it. And I think they're kind of taken aback, like, oh, I guess we don't have to do that tradition. Where a lot of times the clients, I'm like, well, what feels right to you guys? Do you want to do this? We can do it multiple other ways. And I think it's just a good reminder for them that weddings are so traditional, but it doesn't mean you have to follow that. And it's not going to change the day. It's not going to like ruin your day for you if you don't follow the years of traditions.
I mean,
Right.
how
I think
how
that kind
happy
of
are we that the garter toss is not happening anymore?
It's not happening.
So
let's move
happy.
past.
Yeah. Yeah. We probably did like one or two last year. Like nobody really does it. So
Yeah, it's just
yeah.
let's move on
Yeah.
to that one.
Yeah.
That is interesting, and kind of circling back to a challenge that we faced is on the day of the wedding or the whole planning process, really who is the client? Is it the bride or is it the
Mhm.
mom and dad paying? And mom and dad are very traditional. So these brides that come in with these
Mhm.
amazing Pinterest boards and inspiration boards of what they want, we want to give that to them, but then
Mhm.
mom and dad are very traditional in what they think weddings
Yeah.
should be like, since weddings are the exact same as they were 40 years ago.
Mhm.
So it's kind of that, again, that finding that balance between the two and making both parties very happy.
Yeah.
It's been interesting to kind of see that
Yeah.
progress through too.
And I was going to say, Carrie, that would be very different probably than your experience because obviously Beck and Kelly are in the South where the tradition part of things is still kind of there. And Carrie's still in LA and I worked out in LA for 10 years. And that was not even, I mean, I maybe had one or two parents get involved in all of 10 years of working there. But for the most part, I would say, Carrie, are your clients pretty much like self-directing when it comes to their planning, or do you still have some parents that are involved old school?
I Most of them are self-directing. I definitely have some moms that are very involved. And usually it goes really well. Like last year I had a client and it was like always her mom and her on the call, which was fine. She was wonderful, loved working with them. Um, but a lot of times there is more so I think the client is doing it, but then they're coming to me being like, well, we had this conversation with my mom and she thinks X, Y, and Z. So I try to help be like that third party who's like, this doesn't have to happen like that, and just kind of be like the voice of reason too to help them kind of do what they want to do at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. Although I will say recently, I had an inquiry and I was very taken aback by it, but I had an inquiry and when I called, once they set up the consultation, it was the mom who was on it and I had no idea that it was going to be the mom. Like she had never put any of her information in there. And she was the one kind of like leading the charge. She like put her daughter on the call, but she was the only one communicating with me. And I feel like that usually doesn't go very well when it's just communication with the mom and the kids, like the daughter's like kind of the second person.
We've had quite a few of those actually.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's tough.
We're thick in it. So
Yep.
I'm gonna throw back a question at you guys. What's a trend that you wish would go away?
Mhm.
Ooh, like, well, I know a lot of people are saying wedding parties right now,
Mhm.
and I will say that is true. I'm not seeing as many. I will say since moving to Nashville, when I do have wedding parties, they are large, and that is really shocking to me because I don't even know what to do with all these people. I'm like, why are there 10 bridesmaids? Like how I don't even know that many close friends. But it is very much a Southern thing and possibly a younger generation. Like they cannot cut out their people. So I either have very
Mhm.
large wedding parties or I'm seeing them completely disappear. And for those that cannot decide how to cut out people, like if we're getting way too many people, I will start putting a bug in their ear about saying like, well, what if we don't do anybody and we include them in another way? We'll come up with something that makes it feel good for them. But I'd be okay. I feel I'd be okay if no wedding parties were happening. It would be like one less thing and one less group of people to manage.
Yeah.
Yeah. When it is a big party, it's kind of a hit or miss. I feel like sometimes they're really great and they're kind of like whatever, like we don't really have any cares. And then sometimes it's like they are super high maintenance. So sometimes I'm like,
They're the one getting married, and you're
right,
like, yeah,
right.
okay, this is not your thing.
I've had a few clients in the past year who kind of did away with like all of the formal like formalities of cake cutting, first dances, and I actually really liked it. And I feel like from a crowd perspective, it was just like we finished the toast and dinner and they just rolled right into partying and dancing and it was totally fine. Like they didn't need these like moments and a lot of them were like more shy. They didn't want the spotlight on
Mhm.
them. But especially cake cutting, I see a lot of people do away with that. They're like, I don't see the point of why I need to feed my partner a slice of cake. So
Right.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
I'm good. I'm good getting rid of that. I feel like it's just less like things I have to fit into the timeline.
Yeah.
I was gonna
I
say
think those
on the
are,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah.
totally agree with let's get rid of those
And
trends.
it's a little awkward sometimes.
It
People
is.
are like, should I come watch the cake cutting or can I just go to the bar and get a drink? So,
Yeah.
I
My trend, it's not a trend, but hot take would be always do a first look.
mm,
mm,
Always do a
yeah,
first look for so
yeah,
many reasons.
I'm with you on
yeah,
that.
yeah.
I guess yeah, for me and Gabby and I, we actually have an episode coming up that we're going to talk about hot takes, but that was one that I've thought about because sometimes I have clients who don't see each other till they walk down the aisle, and I'm like, it's like 5 or 6 o'clock at night, and you have just not seen each other all day long on your wedding day, and so I think it's like such a miss opportunity to like spend more time with your partner.
I have a laundry list of why I think this.
That'll
Maybe
be, you
we
can maybe come back on that episode.
yeah,
We'll talk about wedding
Laundry
hot
list
takes.
of why I could write a speech about how do a first look. So
yeah,
Yeah.
agreed.
What were you gonna say, Gabby?
Oh, I was just gonna say back on the like how we've nixed a lot of the traditional programming. On the flip side of that, um, I've had a lot of couples that want it to be so casual, but it's almost too casual where I'm like, your guests need to know what to do. Like you can't just have a free flowing cocktail hour for 6 hours. Your guests are like, they are trained humans that understand that weddings happen a certain way and they are going to be waiting for some key points in the evening. So if you don't have some type of schedule, you're going to see a lot of people being like, well, this was a dud, or the wedding planner did a bad job. And like, let me be selfish for a minute. I do not want to be involved in that. And so essentially, I kind of have to tell those couples, like, hey, we can get rid of these program things, but we do have to have some type of separation of like, let's have them actually sit at a seat for dinner. You just cannot have them mingling the whole time. And I know a lot of couples, when I ask them what do they want their wedding experience to be like, they're like, we just want to hang out and have a good party with our friends. And I understand that. But to get to the party, you've got to go through a few steps, you know? And people are paying to go to these weddings like with travel and accommodations and like you can't just have a hangout.
yeah.
No, you need structure. You
Yeah.
need some sort of structure so guests know what they're doing
Mhm.
because when guests get on site, they want to be told what to do. They
Yeah.
want to know where to go,
Mhm.
want to know what they should be eating.
Mhm.
You need to have some sort of structure in place. You can bring the fun atmosphere and just
Mhm.
hang out with the friends. Like we will make sure we provide
Yeah.
that for you, but guests get really confused and
Yeah.
sometimes ask more
And bored.
questions and bored
Yeah.
than the
Yes.
clients do. You just want to just yeah, you need structure.
Yeah.
You need something.
Mhm.
Because I think if the client has, I've had that too, Gabby. I think the client has this expectation of like, let's just hang out and have a good time. But as a guest coming to the wedding, they have an expectation of like, they're going to know where their seat is, where they can put down their purse, their coat, whatever. Because I've also had clients be like, we'll just let 100 people figure out where they want to sit. I'm like, no, that doesn't work. Like, as casual as you want it to be, you still need to give them a table assignment. They can pick wherever they want to sit at that table. But like
Yeah.
the free for all just isn't a possibility that won't create chaos because like you said, Gabby, eventually people are going to come up being like, where do I sit? I'm like, wherever you want. Like, it just doesn't work well. So,
Confusion over their faces. You're
Yeah.
like, I'm
yeah.
so sorry.
Right.
And having to explain that it gets very complicated.
I feel like
to
it's
do
very
that.
rare that it's like a success and you have to like
Yeah.
be really intentional about like
Yeah.
the different food that you have, the different drinks, the different experiences. Like you have to
Mhm.
keep them moving, you know, like
Yeah.
Mhm.
you have to do a lot of things to recover from not having a seat for them.
Mhm.
Yep.
Yeah. Or
For
like
sure.
go set the expectations way early on in the like invitation wedding website. Like, here is the structure of this wedding. If you're not mentally prepared for this, do not come.
Right.
Yes, full transparency.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh man. Okay. As we wrap up here, we've got a couple more questions for you. I want to hear about long-term goals for Mint Springs Farm. Are you growing the team? I mentioned the team growth because at the beginning of the episode, you mentioned you both want to be very involved. And I want to say, knowing from the wedding industry, we hit a point of burnout. We all do. And so, what does that look like for you? How do you avoid burnout and how do you continue to grow and keeping yourselves involved or stepping away?
Yeah, I mean, we always want to grow. We always want to continue to bring more weddings to the property because we only do one wedding a day. We're kind of limited on how many weddings we can actually do. So we have numbers in our mind of where we want to be with how many weddings per year we want. But no matter what, yes, we want to grow the team for sure. I would love to kind of step back from a lot of the planning role so I can have my hands in more of the management of the team and just kind of daily day-to-day business
Yeah.
aspects of it. But no matter how big our team grows, Beck and I will always be very involved in that. That has been important to us from day one. We are on 40 acres of land. So I think it'd be, now that we kind of have our head wrapped around of the business side of things, now it's like, okay, how can we expand on the property? What other structures could we build? Landscaping, adding different landscaping for different photo ops. Just kind of always going back to the creative side of just what can we do to be better? How can we better ourselves? How can we be better for our clients? What are more services that we can provide them? Maybe not inclusive per se, but maybe like what are some services they can add on to just be that much better than we were last year? So we're very big on growth.
Yeah.
Love that.
Awesome. And what is, lastly, one piece of advice you guys would give to someone aspiring to be a venue owner in the wedding industry?
Know your why, and know where you want to go. Because it takes a lot of work and it takes a lot of drive. And if you don't really know why you're wanting to do it, you're probably not going to go very far. And so I think just having that clear vision of where you want to go, and then also just surrounding yourselves with people that know more than you do. Because you're not going to really get anywhere without other people. What is the saying? Like, if you go alone, you'll go fast, but if you go with someone, you'll go far. I feel like that's so true in business. We would not be where we are today without the people that walked with us in that year and a half as we purchased the farm. And we have people, you know, today that are working with us too. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think just trying to educate yourself as just you can for owning a business. Like talk to other business owners, ask the hard questions, ask what their challenges were, and hope for honesty. You obviously can't know what you're going to expect until you get your feet wet and you're in it. And that's just all of hospitality and the event world. But just trying to get as much knowledge and advice from others to kind of get yourself prepared for what you might go through. And knowing you'll have them again to lean back on if you have questions or anything. So just having those key people in your village is huge.
Yeah, definitely build up a community.
Mhm.
Kelly and Beck, thank you so much. This was so insightful. I feel like I've learned a lot, and I feel like we could definitely have you guys back to talk about wedding hot takes, which would be
Yeah.
fun. But how can people connect with you guys and with Mint Springs Farm?
Yeah, absolutely. Our website is mintspringsfarmtennessee.com. So definitely you can check out our website. We are constantly, we have an amazing marketing director, and she's constantly putting up galleries from weddings. And so they're very current. And then also doing some blogs, which are really, I think, resourceful for planners, but also for couples as well. So that's a great resource. And then Instagram as well, just Mint Springs Farm. Just Mint Springs Farm.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
Awesome. Amazing.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. And Jabbers, we also have a YouTube video up where we don't edit it out. So you can see all of our bloopers from the day. But thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you in 2 weeks.
all right.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
Okay, I'm gonna press end record.
That's
One
Gabby.
moment.